Hello, hello, hello out there. Hey, it's Chet. Welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. Got a great episode for you today. My interview with Wendy Gadzuk. She does really great assemblage art and 2D art, and she's just really music. She's really cool, great Dark Art Society community member, very active, and been wanting to have her on now for a while now, and I finally did, and we had a long conversation. So this is a nice long one, really fun, really easy to talk to, really cool. So that's coming up. I will keep this short because this is a pretty long episode, but I've been still working on my chaos show. That's going well. It's hot as hell here in Southern California. So I'm not really going outside at all, just sitting indoors next to the air conditioner, painting, and working on the dystopia book, which is done. It's done. It is. We found the printer. I'm waiting to get a contract from them. Got the prices set. So that's exciting. It's going to be, probably, by maybe the end of the week or the beginning of next week, it's going to be out of my hands and out printing. So that's amazing. So I'm really, really excited about that. And let's see what else is going on. That's the main thing, really. Just busy as usual. Trying to keep up with the chaos paintings. I'm at the point now where I'm at the difficult stage where it's like everything is blocked out. It's kind of all the fun, inspiring part is over because I started them all, and then there's that middle part in between, beginning and finishing, where it's just like, oh man, you're kind of trudging along, and it's hard to tell how much something needs or what it needs still, and it just kind of takes longer. This is the long part. I find that the initial, starting, especially if you're really inspired, kind of goes fast. And but I'm going through it, like I always do. What else is going on? So much going on, and I come here to talk about it, and I just blank out. I'm kind of screwed up today because I slept on my arm wrong last night. My shoulder woke me up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I couldn't get back to sleep, so I just got up. Then around 12:30, I hit a wall and had to lay down and take a nap. Then I woke up like a couple hours later. Now I'm all, discombobulated and and then realizing I had a bunch of stuff I was supposed to do today, and now it's late. Anyway, so it is, by the way, Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. I still can never manage to do that. I would really wish I had that at the beginning of every episode, but I always forget. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the new subscribers and just get on with the interview because it's a really fun one. Let's see. I'm not prepared for this. If you want to join the Patreon, I'm telling you, you can just try it 1 month for $1. You can spend $1 and try it because it's so worth it. Because just the Facebook group is so great, so active. It's just excellent, and everybody, I've made so many great friends in there, and everybody really loves each other and supports each other. Whether you're a dark art fan or a dark artist, it's the best. I can't think of a better community online anywhere for people into this kind of stuff. I haven't seen it if it exists. So, just go to patreon.com/darkartsociety. Like I say, try it for 1 month, and it's easy to cancel if you don't like it or you're not into it. So, okay, let's get into new subscribers. I got to check my messages. Randall Perkins always kindly lets me know because he knows I have trouble keeping track of all this stuff. Okay, let's see. Last subscriber was Dan Kelly. Dan Manhands Kelly. That was where I left off last week. Let's see if there's any new subscribers. Yes. Okay. This is a tough one to pronounce. Petja Pustisek. Thank you so much, Petja. John Richer. Thank you, John. Liz Kelly. Thank you, Liz. Eric Lamarca. Thank you, Eric. Chris Badenoch. Thank you. Wow, that's a lot. Thanks, everybody. Make sure, if I read your name, go find the Dark Art Society Cooperative on Facebook if you're on Facebook, and send us a request, and we'll let you in. Okay, is that it? I think that's it. Let's just get on with the interview. I could do the synesthesia name word of the week, because I'll do Wendy, because Wendy's a good one, a strong one. Now it's a weird one. Wendy is the same taste as the name Mary and the name Cindy. Now go figure that one out. All three of those names, to me, have the taste of eating a raw hot dog cold from the fridge. It's true. In my brain it is. So, it's weird. It's weird. I can't explain it. Anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and here we go. Episode 214, Wendy Gadzuk. Hello, Wendy.
Hi, Chet.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time.
Awesome. I feel kind of like Eric Messenger, I think, who you had last week.
Uh-huh.
And when he said this was like a bucket list for him, I'm like, I feel the exact same way.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm honored to be here.
Oh, well, we're honored to have you. Yeah, I love your stuff. We don't have enough assemblage artists on, or we haven't had many. I think one maybe only. No,
well, no, because there's three artists who I really like and admire, and two of them friends of mine. There's Liz McGrath.
Yeah, Liz McGrath. Well, yeah, okay.
Stephanie Vega and Ave Rose.
And who?
Ave Rose.
Yeah, what am I thinking? We've had and Chris Cooksey.
Oh yeah.
So it's been like your number 5.
4 of the hundreds.
I can't remember it all. It's all a blur to me. But anyway, I mean, I just I love assemblage art. It's like I secretly fantasize about creating it, and I just don't have time to do it. But it just seems like so fun. It seems like so much fun.
Yeah.
And just
you kind of do that with your frames, which I really like about your work, the way you integrate them into your work instead of looking at them as something different.
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, that's the very minimum, though. I love the idea of just, it's very like kind of like altar-ish, like spiritual or magical. It's like arranging objects on a surface. Totally. And getting this flow to it. It's like kind of spiritual, it seems like, assemblage stuff, like when it's done well. Don't you think?
I do. And I was just talking with a friend of mine, because, I mean, part of, a lot of the hours that I spend on my work is collecting objects,
Yeah,
and
right.
Everybody asks, well, where do you get all your stuff? And it's like, well, wherever I can, thrift stores, flea markets, trash picking, things I find on my walks. People give me stuff all the time. I used to have a neighbor in this big loft apartment building. I lived in Oakland, and every so often he would just leave boxes of random stuff outside the door. I've met people on Instagram who I don't even know, who just hey, I have this box of stuff that I want to send you. I'm like, awesome.
Wow, that's great.
Great. But now my studio is just filling up with stuff. And I'm not complaining, because I totally appreciate gifts in any way. And I love having all this stuff to work with. But oh my God, my studio is a disaster.
I bet. Yeah, I mean, I think most artists seem to be kind of, I don't want to say hoarders, but like collectors of weird oddities.
Yes. I'd like to call myself a collector, not a hoarder.
There's a fine line. I know there's a fine line for me. That's for damn sure. But I rarely do I see a studio that doesn't have a lot of cool crap all over it. An artist studio. Yeah. It just seems kind of like part of the deal. And
I don't trust people whose studios are too organized.
I know. Yeah, it's like, where aren't you letting go? Aren't you supposed to be letting go and getting crazy? But everyone's got their own way, I suppose. But
right. I just saw. I guess you just post a picture of your studio?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw that, and I showed Tony. I'm like, look, his studio is kind of messy too.
And that's clean for me too. That's like I had just. Right before I started all these paintings, I did a massive, like the most biggest cleaning and organizing I've ever done, and it's like now that I'm deep into this show, it's all it just happens. It's part of the process. Everything gets to be a huge mess, and it's like it gets so much worse than that. It gets to the point where I can't stand it anymore. There's I have a high tolerance for messes. You can see my office here. I've got a high tolerance for it, but there's a point that I just cannot. It's like I have to, or otherwise I'll just start throwing stuff and putting it in a pile and get it, just going crazy.
But I know I'm like my living space is always, for the most part, very organized and clean, except for a couple of random piles. But for some reason, my studio, my workspace, and my car. It's not trashed, but I don't take the same care as I do in my home for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of us seem to just view cars as modes of transportation. We just need it just for getting places. It's not about That's how I've always viewed it. Although I can appreciate nice cars and stuff, it's like I've never looked at my own cars as anything other than a way to get somewhere and back that I need to be. That has to do with my getting food or my art career or something that matters to me. Going to the hospital, whatever, the doctor or something.
I was thinking about, talking about all this stuff and arranging stuff and organizing stuff as far as assemblage work goes. I sometimes do think about all the stuff that I have, and I get overwhelmed. And then I just had this revelation kind of recently, like that's what I do. Like I take this chaos and I put it, some semblance of order to this chaos.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who I just went over to her house last week, and she gave me some jewelry making supplies that she was kind of downsizing. And she said that she was trying to get rid of a lot of her extra stuff because there's this, not only does it take up space, but it holds this energy. And I was like, yeah, it does. But I'm like, but I think that's part of my work too. It's like not only like physically organizing this stuff into some kind of beautiful organized form, but like also manipulating the energy that's inside it and changing it into something that flows in a different way.
Yeah. It's like it's kind of like your studio with all of your stuff, your raw materials is like it's like the chaotic, creative place,
right,
from which all the ordered art pieces come from.
Yes,
it's like you're taking the chaos and then you're putting it into order. And there's so much about assemblage art that's really got that kind of like sacred space, cosmic energy, and because a lot of these things have, they're old and they've been owned by a bunch of different, a lot of them have been owned by all kinds of different people and different circumstances, and anybody that's sensitive to that stuff, you pick up an object and you can feel the energy, and it's I imagine you have felt bad energy from things you've had and good energy. I mean, it's in a way you're transforming that into some other kind of energy, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't think when I'm actually working with materials, I'm not necessarily aware of that, but it still kind of dictates my process in some sort of way, even if it's subconscious.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that's art. That's the art making process for, I think most of us is like a subconscious ordering of disparate things on a canvas or, on a board for, whatever.
Ideas.
Yeah. It's interesting. But aside from all the cosmic stuff, it just seems so fun. Like fun. I find myself doing this on, I have so much stuff everywhere, like I've got, a jawbone right here. I've got this little.
Wait, is that human?
Yeah, it's fake though. It's like it's a reproduction.
Oh, right on.
I got a bunch, skulls, of course, a little wind-up toy my mom gave me when I was a kid, some Batman figure that I think Ryan Case sent me. It's like, and when I clean, I can't bear to get rid of all this stuff. And so I put it in it just laid out in a certain order on my desk, and it's like an altar in a weird way, but it doesn't, with that, it's like an altar without some greater intention other than just kind of like organizing it in a pleasing way. And that's, this is assemblage art, or, at the core, I think. So It's like I do it naturally. I just haven't like intentionally going, I'm going to make a piece of artwork out of this.
Right.
But I want to.
What was I thinking? Oh, just how, you said that it, like the organizing stuff is fun. And then sometimes it's like, kind of, that's how I sketch in my studio is I'll lay things out and I'll get, I don't usually sketch on paper my assemblage work. Mm-hmm. Occasionally I do, but usually I just start moving stuff around and putting stuff together.
So if a piece is going to be displayed up against the wall, you have it like lying flat in your studio and then you start arranging it. It's so cool. It seems so fun.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun part. And then, sometimes I'll have a piece. I'm like, okay, I want to do this, and I'll take a picture of it. And then I'll show Tony, who's my partner. Yeah. And he's like, okay, cool. Is that done? I'm like, no, I haven't even started yet. Like, like that's the fun part. But then it's like, okay, this is how I want it to look. Like, how do I make that happen? And then that kind of becomes the tedious problem solving part. Like, God, where do I start? Like, if I do this first, then I can't do this later. And if I do this now, it's going to screw this up when I do this.
Yeah, it's like the engineering part. That's like that with, every form of art. It's like you got to do the grunt work in order to express the idea, Everyone just would want to unless you like doing that, which I do like doing that. I like problem solving and figuring out how to do it, and that's fun to me as well. The engineering and just actually doing it physically. But everyone would just like to imagine a painting and have it done, or imagine a piece and have it done. But that's not all of there is to it. No. That's only like half of it. Really, is the idea. The other half is executing the idea.
Yeah.
And that can be a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I enjoy that problem-solving process, and sometimes I get so, I just get so worked up, and I start getting really unhappy. I'm like, I shouldn't be feeling this unhappy, like when I'm creating. What's going on?
Yeah, that's I've said often that it feels like kind of an addiction. Kind of art feels to me kind of like an addiction, or like you get a fix from it. It's almost like a healthy way of doing drugs in a way. It's like, if you're successful, you just get such a rush and such a buzz from it. It feels so good to create a successful piece. And then when it's not working out, you just feel so angry and pissed off, and just like totally affects your mood. Yeah. It's powerful in that way. It's weird.
Yeah. So, I've been doing Bikram yoga for the past 20 years.
Really? I didn't know it's been around that long.
It's been around longer than that.
Is that the one where they put the heat in the room? That they turn the heat up and you get all sweaty? I didn't know. I thought that was like a new thing.
No. I mean, he's been kind of in the headlines more recently because he's a horrible person.
You're right.
So I'm reluctant to call it Bikram yoga, even though he's the originator of that series. I practice with my friend now who lives down the street from me, who I play in a band with her as well. We have a Motorhead tribute band together. Mm-hmm. And she's someone I've known for, over 20 years when I lived in Philadelphia and she was in San Francisco. But she's got a heated room now. So we'll just, I go over there a couple times a week and we just practice together.
Wow, that's cool.
But sometimes, I know that like part of doing yoga is kind of mindfulness and being in the moment. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I'll just have this peace in my head, while I'm doing yoga. And it's like, I just can't get it out of my head. And by the end of the practice, I'll have come up with a solution, that I couldn't have come up with another way.
Right. Yeah. I found that with, sometimes with meditation, which, I learned this when I started taking these magic classes 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I don't remember. 5 years ago. I don't remember. But, yoga is a term, people say yoga is like basically the kind of yoga you're talking about, which is the physical yoga. But but meditation is a yoga. Yes. It's like they're all forms of yoga, these different forms of yoga.
Totally.
And it was like one of these classes I took was the 8 limbs of yoga or something. And I was like, okay, I'll check that out. And it was all about meditation, totally about just meditating. It's interesting. But anyway, I've found that, I'm always, the whole point, focusing on my breathing and not moving and not scratching an itch or anything. You got to sit perfectly still. It's the kind I practice anyway. And you're focus on your breathing and clear your mind. And sometimes a problem, it's so weird. It's because my mind becomes clear, if I allow it. And if there's a problem, it's like it'll come in my mind, and my mind will start clearly like solving equations to figure out the problem, not mathematical equations, but it's running through scenarios. And it's and I found that it makes my brain work so good. Like if I have a specific problem, I can kind of process it through my meditation, and and it's almost like I'm sitting there. Waiting for my brain to figure the problem out. It's like kind of like a computer going through all these little simulations. It's a trip, but and then you got to remember them after, because you don't want to stop. But
right, write it down.
But anyway, it's really great for problem solving, I found.
It's funny because you feel like sometimes when you're in the middle of all these problems, you don't have time to do something like that. Mm-hmm. But taking the time just kind of it saves you time.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
And 100%. It's interesting how, a lot of like this style of yoga that I do is very physical, and it can get a bad rap in the yoga community, for being just, I don't know, more of like a power yoga kind of system. But there's, it's like the more I do it, and it's the same postures every time. Mm-hmm. The more I do it, the more I realize how it's all really the same. There are so many,
totally.
I should start making this journal with my yoga thoughts. Cause for example, there's one posture. Every time I go into it, I get set up with my feet, and then I move into the posture, and then I adjust my feet again. I'm like, why do I do that? Like, it's just force of habit. Like, I set it up beforehand exactly the way I know that I need to be. And then I just start thinking, well, how many other aspects of my life do I do that in, where I waste energy because it's this thing that I'm used to doing?
Just force of habit.
Yeah.
Right.
What if I just stay the way I am in that posture after I do the setup?
Right.
What happened then?
Yeah, that's awareness. That's becoming aware of the whole thing of meditation and yoga and the things like this are about awakening, becoming conscious, because we're just all on a continuous loop of habitual behaviors. And it's like, people a lot of times it's talked about, enlightenment or waking up as this huge boom, you're all of a sudden enlightened and everything is all good and that's all you got to do. But it's really like waking up, I think, on a more practical level is just noticing when you're doing repetitive habitual behaviors, just becoming aware of these. It's so small and simple,
right?
But powerful, you know?
It is.
So just,
it is.
Yeah. And then there's so many of them. Once you start realizing, you're like, shit, I'm like walking around like a robot all the time, not thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. And, you know,
yeah.
But,
not looking up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to go. I don't really know anything about you other than your work. I've seen you on, in the Dark Art Society cooperative group and talked to you there, and seen you at shows, and you seem really cool and positive, nice person.
Thank you. And you too.
Thanks. And you live in Joshue Tree, because I remember thinking you were in LA, and then you corrected me one time. I was like, oh yeah, it's like I always think of Joshua Tree. I always think of all of Southern California as LA, even though that's really
right. I mean,
Joshua Tree's isn't even. Yeah. Is it Southern California technically, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but that's far. Joshua Tree's far.
I mean, actually, in Morongo Valley, which is just a little bit before Joshua Tree.
How long is that from like LA?
About 2 hours.
Yeah, that's pretty far out there. That's like almost to San Diego.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say someone from San Diego is from LA, but anyway. So that's kind of the only thing I know about you. So, I want to hear the backstory. Where'd you grow up? Your when you got into art, your background and schooling, all that stuff. That's what I'm curious about right now.
All right. Well, I was born in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Maryland, right outside of Washington.
Okay.
And I was an only child. My parents split when I was 5, and they had joint custody of me. So I just spent, a lot of time going back and forth between the two of them. And let's see, I went to art school in Philadelphia and at the University of the Arts, and I studied jewelry and metalsmithing there.
Oh, wow.
And I actually did a year of community college before that where I was doing graphic design. And I took a jewelry class there, and that's kind of what got me interested in focusing on jewelry, metalsmithing, and that type of work.
Were you creative as a kid and interested in art and stuff when you were little?
I was.
And music, because you're a musician also?
Music was more of my thing, I think, than art.
Mm-hmm.
I started playing piano when I was 4. And
wow.
I took lessons for about, 8 years.
Wow. I wish.
Like forever when you're a kid.
I wish someone made me take piano for 8 years when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for that, because I learned to play by ear, which really, forms my ear as a musician, to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And I took violin lessons for a couple of years in there somewhere.
Wow.
But I don't know, when I went, 12, when I was like 12, 13, I started developing other interests, which is not necessarily positive.
Right.
But I did start to fall in love with rock and roll at that time, and that became a huge part of my life. Like, I was like that typical 70s disco kid. Mm-hmm. And then I remember my friend, I went over to her house one day and she played this record, and I was like, what is this? And it was AC/DC, Dirty Deeds.
Oh, yeah.
This is awesome.
Classic. I remember listening to that album, too, at my friend's house for the first time. Being like, whoa, yeah.
Oh, it was such a turning point in my life.
Yeah.
And
that was my big band too, AC/DC. It was like that. I mean, there was always I had an older brother and older sister in the 70s. So imagine it was like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Aerosmith. All this stuff was always playing. But when I came into my own and I was getting my favorite bands, it was AC/DC and Devo. It was like totally opposite ends of the spectrum, but
right.
Those were my big first ones. 12 years old.
Black Sabbath.
Yep.
Aerosmith was a big one for me. Judas Priest.
Aerosmith was my first album I ever got. It was Aerosmith, Draw the Line. That was the first. I got it for Christmas. I remember my dog pissed on the cover, so it had like a yellow stain on it because it was a white album cover. I think
do you still have it?
I think I do.
Awesome. That's great. That one tells a story, huh?
Yeah.
Aerosmith was my first concert, the Back in the Saddle tour. I think it was 1983.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so, yeah, that was definitely like changed the trajectory of my interests at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Rock and roll, boys, cars, drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got all that out of the way early.
Oh my God. I can't imagine having a daughter who's partying.
Oh, man.
It's nerve-wracking. I got my granddaughters and I'm just like...
That time.
What's that?
I don't envy my parents at that time. Yeah, I remember the first time I ran away from home, I was 12 or 13.
Oh my God.
And that was the first time I heard that Ozzy song, Flying High Again.
Uh-huh.
I was like, he's singing to me. He totally knows what I'm going through right now. This is the best song ever.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm glad I made it through that phase alive.
Yeah, can you imagine having a 12-year-old daughter and having her run away? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It would be so horrible. It'd be so,
yeah,
I can't even tell you.
Awful. Sorry, guys.
You made it through. You made it through, though. You know, everyone's got their path.
Yeah.
We all got to go through it. Everyone's got their karma.
Yes. So yeah, okay, I'm just going to kind of interject something that I'm doing right now, which is I'm making a book. I created an oracle deck
cool.
a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's called Deconstructed Divination, and I'm in the process of doing a book right now of haiku poems to go along with the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And so the deck is basically sections of my drawings. I just cropped in on little sections, and I kind of...
I saw that. You posted this. I saw yeah, right. That's so cool.
So in the book, I shared 12, I think I did, there were 16 drawings that I drew from.
Mm-hmm.
And I printed 12 of the drawings, and I just did a little like kind of intro to those. And I talked about how as a kid, I would draw with my mom, and we would like, sometimes she'd just like cover our dining room table in newspaper and then just pull out these big sheets of newsprint and put these chalk pastels in the middle of the table and just put on music, and we'd just sit there and draw. And it was just random drawings, you know, that didn't have to be anything. They were just whatever came out. And that was kind of how I started drawing. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
I've done this with my granddaughters. This is exactly when they were young. I mean, they're kind of starting, they're 9 and 10 now, so they're kind of getting into video editing and TikTok and all this stuff like that. But I spent a lot of time with them where we just put music on and just draw or paint, you know, so much fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, I remember like, even as a kid, like my coloring books, when my mom would kind of color with me, I remember she would like color the grass purple, and I was like, wow, you're allowed to do that? She's
That's
like,
so cool.
Yeah, who says you can't? I'm
so
like,
she was artistically minded for sure, it sounds like. Yeah.
And I remember she used to talk about like her horrible art class in junior high school, where like the teacher was like, you must have a 1-inch margin around the paper or else you're going to fail.
Right.
It's like all these rules that she was just rebelling against, I think. That was the only thing that you were like graded on, was like your margin perfectly 1 inch.
Basically, how well can you follow orders?
Right.
In an art class.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And,
so did she do art? I mean, did she make art beyond it being a hobby, or?
Not beyond a hobby. And she hasn't in a while, but she did like, have you ever heard of Michelle Cassou?
No.
She's a painter, and she did a video, like a DVD called Birth of a Process. Mm-hmm. And basically she kind of fell into the same thing where she's French. And as a kid, she really wanted to do art. And she went to, some of the French art universities that were very, very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Very strict and very traditional in their approach to art. And she just didn't really fit into that. And one day, the head of the school took her aside and said, this is not for you. You're never going to make it in art. You might as well find a new career path.
Wow.
And she was just crushed.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I know. Her dreams were like shattered, and she left and she went out and worked in the corporate world for a while and was just very, very unhappy.
What a bummer.
Yeah. And then one day, I don't remember exactly how she came across this, but she saw a bunch of kids drawing, and she saw their just kind of freedom and their abandon in their approach. And she's like, that's what I want to do. I want to draw like a child. Mm-hmm. And she started doing that. And so in this DVD, Birth of a Process, you basically see her process. She started doing these drawings, which are kind of awesome. And as her process progressed, not because she was trying to adhere to any rules, but her technique improves along the way. And she's basically like exercising these demons, and it was a very profound experience for her. And one thing she said was that after she had gone through this process, her vision improved. Like she didn't need to wear glasses anymore, which she had been wearing for decades.
Oh, weird.
I know. It's kind of fascinating. And so now she teaches classes in basically that process. So my mom took some of those classes. And she made some awesome paintings. But, one of the things about this process in particular is not using materials that are precious, because that can be intimidating sometimes. Mm. But now, that I see what my mom has done in that, I always encourage her, like, why don't you maybe, instead of painting on paper, like just get some canvases or something that's,
right.
Because these are awesome. I want to hang on to these.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want to do that. So I don't know. I don't want to, obviously push somebody to do something that they're not comfortable with, even though I would love to see them kind of taken to the next level.
Right. Yeah. But I bet you in a way, she's able to experience the career that she missed out on through you in a way. I kind of feel that way about my son, who's a drummer and a professional musician. It's like I never made it in my band. And so it's like I kind of seeing him succeed in music is like kind of satisfies that part,
right.
in me a little bit, like seeing him do that. So I'm sure it's like a big cool thing for her to see you, doing it, and
yeah.
That's such a bummer about that school. They should have told her that this style isn't right for you. You need to try. Right. You need to be going to a school that teaches like, I don't know, abstract expressionism or whatever her thing was. Not you'd never be an artist, go away. I mean, that's bullshit. That's a terrible thing to say to someone. Sorry, it was my alarm. So anyway, where were we?
But when we were talking about my mom, and the thing that's frustrating sometimes is that she, which is appreciated, basically she's just says a lot of times how I'm such a better artist than she is. And I'm like, no, I'm not. The only thing that I do is I do it consistently. Right. And I try to use archival materials,
right.
That's the only difference.
Right.
I'm not a better artist, it's discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. Discipline and practice and doing it over and over and over and over. It's like, that's most of it.
Yeah.
It's putting the hours in.
Yeah. And, a couple of years ago, I think you've seen this. I'm a co-curator at a gallery in Joshue Tree.
Yeah.
It's called La Matadora.
Yep.
And the first show that I ever did was called Occulted Religion. And I asked my mom if she wanted to put one of her paintings in the show. And she ended up sending me this 8x10 envelope full of just black and white pen and ink drawings that she did in 1980 that I had never seen. And I think you might have seen one. I posted one in the Dark Art Society group along with one of my drawings.
Oh,
and there's,
yeah.
Such a parallel.
Yeah,
and I had never
that's
seen it
right.
before.
That's right. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Spooky.
I know. So I ended up she just sent those to me because she was looking through her art stuff and, didn't think I would be interested in, those old things. I'm like, these are great. Like, I'm just going to frame 5 of these and put them in the show. And I did. And
cool.
I love them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to, since you brought it up, I did want to hit upon the art gallery as well. This is a gallery in Joshue Tree?
Yes, yeah.
So, what's it like in Joshue Tree as like a community? Because I all I know about Joshue Tree is that everybody I know goes out there to trip on mushrooms, to do like a weekend trip, camping trip, and trip on mushrooms. I don't know, that's the thing you always hear. Oh, it's the best place to trip, but I never think of it as like, what's the community like? Is it like a small town? I mean, how many people live there and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really bad with numbers as far as towns go.
Yeah, me
It
too.
is a small community. I've been here for about 5 years now. I moved from Oakland, so it's quite a big change.
Yeah.
I did used to live in Tucson, which is where my love of the desert kind of began, and I missed it ever since I left Tucson. I just kind of longed for the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who lives out here named Kate McCabe, who's a filmmaker, photographer, painter. And I went to art school with her in Philadelphia. And we didn't really know each other back then. I was a couple years ahead of her. We were aware of one another, but we weren't really friends. Mm-hmm. And then I started seeing her at shows in Los Angeles and, became Facebook friends.
Oh, what a trip.
I know. And then I started, I came out here and started visiting her. And, I just didn't think that buying a house in California was, realistic. And then I looked at the prices at that time and I'm like, oh shit, maybe it is. And so, yeah, I bought at a time when it was really good to buy. It's right now, like everywhere else, the housing market is absolutely insane.
Right.
In the past 5 years, I think the value of our home has more than tripled. And
yeah, same with ours. Same with ours.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
It's just crazy right now.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Joshue Tree, Morongo Basin, which is kind of it encompasses basically Morongo Valley, Yucca Valley, 29 Palms, Wonder Valley.
Okay.
Landers, Pioneer Town. It's all kind of part of the same community.
Pioneer Town, that's a place that Camper Van, the band Camper Van Beethoven, you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
I love that band. They do a thing every year at Pioneer Town.
Oh yeah, Happy and Harriet's for the camp out thing.
Yeah. With that band Cracker and Camper Van Beethoven, because the lead singer is like the lead guy in both bands.
I saw them at the Smoke Inn at 4th of July.
Really?
In Washington, D.C. in 1986, and I think that was the last time that I smoked pot ever.
It's a good place to do it, seeing Camper Van Beethoven, because they're pretty psychedelic.
Yeah.
They're awesome band. But it's a big enough community to sustain a gallery, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a small gallery, and
but still,
there are a handful of galleries around here.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's probably bigger. It's bigger than I'm thinking, I guess.
Probably.
If you can sustain an art gallery in your town, it's not that small.
Yeah.
It's hard to sustain a gallery in any town, let alone a small town.
It's definitely hard.
Yeah.
My friend Kalina Hake is the owner of the gallery. Mm. And I met her in Tucson. She used to live in Tucson. And I didn't know her that well. Again, we were kind of acquaintances. I used to bartend at a place in Tucson, and she would come in and drink. And
that's another weird thing, right?
Yeah.
That you both end up in the same town,
I
right?
I know.
It's a trip.
So much connections have been made here that, kind of we've had connections in the past.
What a trip.
But yet she's deaf, and I didn't even know that she was deaf when I knew her in Tucson.
What, does she read lips?
She reads lips exceptionally well.
Amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
I know. Yeah, she's definitely very skilled and adaptive.
Is she totally deaf?
Not 100%. Like she's got a little bit of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious. I'm like, I wonder what it sounds like to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Curious.
I wonder what things sound like.
What a trip.
You never know what it's like to live in someone else's body.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, she started the gallery. You know, we had talked about starting a gallery, and, you know, me being a Virgo, double Virgo at that, you know, I like think, how would we do that? How's that going to work? You know, I don't know, you know. And then like, next thing I know, I see a Facebook post. She's like, all right, I just, you know, signed a lease on this gallery. I'm like, oh my God, you did it. So, you know, she kind of did it herself. And actually Kate McCabe, the friend that I was just talking about, who lived out here before I did, she and I had a show together, which was about 4 years ago now. It was the second or third show of the gallery. And it just kind of grew from there. And then, you know, after maybe, sometimes I lose track of time. But, you know, maybe after a year or so, Colina asked me if I wanted to start curating some of the shows. So for the past 3 years or so, I've been kind of doing every third show. So we do one show a month at the gallery. So basically I'll do one, you know, 1 month on, 2 months off, like 4 shows a year.
That's cool. And, that's still a lot of work, though.
Oh, it is a lot of work.
Curating is so hard work. It's such hard work.
And I do a lot of group shows, and every time I do a group show, I'm like, why the hell did I do this?
It's a nightmare.
So I hard. Being able to give like this platform for so many people, but it's like, you know, my email's getting all clogged up, and then, you know.
Doesn't it like make you, I know for me when I started curating, it started making me be less demanding with galleries I worked at.
Yeah.
It made me be like more understanding. You know, where instead of going like, can you put my painting in a way that's like in this 50, 60 person group show, can you make sure my painting is positioned this way in the room? Because it's like when you've got 50 people all emailing you about that, it's just like, I feel for them. So it's like, I definitely like backed off of doing naming demands on a gallery at any group show. After that.
You know, I do feel very lucky in that, you know, I would say almost all of the artists that I have ever worked with none of them have been assholes, you know, or very demanding. It's just little things like, because a lot of the artists are my friends, you know, I ask everybody, please follow these submission guidelines. You know, I know you, and sometimes I'm like, you're in the show, but still do what I ask, because I need to have everything in one place. You know, I can't have like, did they text me? Did they send me a message on Instagram? Like, no, I put it all in this inbox.
There are things you don't think about until you curate a show. How hard it is to get. You got texts, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, email. It's like it is so overwhelming. It's such a nightmare.
Yeah.
So and all of that stuff can be fixed by just following the directions that are set out at the beginning.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So I
It
understand.
is a lot of work, and every time I do it, I'm just like, I don't think I can do this. And then I do it. I'm like, I did it.
And then it's very rewarding too. After you put it together, it's
and you know, it's a financial risk, because I'm, you know, basically when on my month, I'm paying the rent, I'm paying all the overhead for the gallery,
right?
And you know, and that's why we take the percentage that we do, because, I mean, I'm very lucky too, because in all the time that I've been doing this, there's only been one show that I lost money on.
Oh, wow. That's a good record.
You know, depending on how you look at it, you know, that's just saying that I covered my expenses,
right?
Not including, you know, it's not giving myself a salary for all the work that I do, which includes gallery sitting and, you know, hanging the show, because it's basically a one-woman show when we do it. Like I'm doing everything. I'm doing the email list. I'm doing the website. I'm doing the tags. I'm doing the promo.
Wow.
Colleen does the Instagram, so that's very cool that she'll do that even when it's my show.
Right.
Everything else, like I'm doing it all. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. But and then the other thing that I really enjoy, like I'm realizing now, like I like hanging shows. Like I've kind of gotten it down to a science where I'm one of those weird artists, and it helps in my assemblage work too, where I like numbers, I like math, I like
interesting
equations.
I like math. I just am no good at it. And it makes me like it more because I'm not talented in that way, or I don't know enough about it to really get into it. But I am interested in it. It's one of those things. When I was a kid, I wasn't. It's funny that you mentioned that though, because Erica at Copro is very single-minded when it comes to hanging a show. She doesn't want anyone to help her.
Yeah.
She's like, I know how this should look. And then it always looks amazing. It's just like, leave Erica alone and she'll just hang the show brilliantly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it sounds like you're the same way.
At first I wasn't, because I wasn't as confident about it.
But that's like assemblage work in a way, hanging a show. It's
You're
like
arranging things.
Yeah, it's exactly what you do. It's like maybe you just had to realize that.
Billy Shire, from La Luz de Jesus, he has a place out here, so he's out in the desert. He and his girlfriend Shirley.
Wow, I didn't know.
Spent a lot of time out here, and Colleen and I were hanging a show for Daniel Martin Diaz. Yeah. So we had some of his work.
Oh, he's great.
He's awesome. Actually, he's going to be showing next month in wait, where are we? This is August. This month. So this coming weekend.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be having an opening at the gallery.
Wow.
So Billy came and helped us hang his work. And he just basically was like, okay, I had an arrangement like of how I thought his work should go. And then Billy's like, okay, boom. He measures everything and like, this is how you do it. Divide it by this. He basically gave me his formula. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And now that I have like this formula, I love doing it.
Oh,
it's
really?
Like, yeah. And the same thing, like people come and like, do you need some help? I'm like, no, just go away.
I have the formula.
Unless it's something really heavy.
Right. That's cool. So does he go to your shows, Billy?
Yeah. He just had back surgery recently.
Shit.
And with the pandemic, everything's been kind of out of whack. But he and Shirley, I see them quite often.
That's cool.
Which is nice, yeah.
Wow. What a trip.
Yeah. So let's see. September is the next show that I'm doing. And I just found out I was going to have Paul Cudenaris. Paul Cudenaris? Yeah. He was going to show some of his roadkill memorial altar photos.
Yeah.
But I just found out he's moving unexpectedly to New Orleans. So that put a monkey wrench in everything.
Oh,
so
bummer.
I'm really bummed he's not going to be.
Why is he moving? He's a fixture.
I know.
He's a fixture in LA.
Did you know he moved to Joshua Tree?
No.
He moved to Joshua Tree, and then he moved to Las Vegas or somewhere around Las Vegas just recently.
Wow.
And now he's moving to New Orleans.
Guy moves a lot.
I know. I'm like, I didn't even get a chance to go on his any of his mining, hikes with him while he lived out there, which I really wanted to do.
Yeah, I never got to know him, but it's like he's always around at the shows. I don't even think I ever really talked to him, but it's like, he's got a very distinctive look.
Totally.
I always see, he just is around. He's active.
Yeah.
He's like posting things and his stuff comes up and he's got books and it's like, I always kind of wanted to meet him and because he seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah. He's really great, really quirky.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw him do, this was before I really knew him. Well, he did a show at Love to Death in San Francisco when I was living in the Bay Area. And I think I met him there. And then he did a talk. There used to be a place in Berkeley called the Bone Room. It sold bones and other things. And they had a little gallery there and they would host events. And he did a talk called Sex Ghosts of the Catacombs.
Wow.
I'm like, I gotta go check this out.
That sounds interesting.
And and then he's done some talks out here. He did one at the Beatnik Lounge in Joshua Tree about cats, and just like it kind of infamous, I think, ghosts of cats and things like that throughout history.
It sounds like you've got kind of a cool little community out there.
Yeah.
It's you got stuff going on. You got more going on than in my town.
It's a very cool place. I'm grateful that the gallery has, been able to sustain itself even through the pandemic. And
yeah, that's amazing.
I think the thing that we have that most galleries in the area don't have, aside from, maybe one or two, is that we've really kind of taken advantage of an online presence. And, we have our website.
This is the answer for galleries.
It really is.
It's the answer. I've been saying this for so long. It's like you need to, galleries need to move into the 21st century and really, have an online presence in a big way, even to the point of doing virtual shows if you need to, and whatever,
Yeah. Most of the sales that I've made over the past year, in the shows that I've done at the galleries, have been at least somewhat rooted in something online, whether it's from the website, whether it's from, watching our, virtual opening, a virtual gallery tour that I've done, something that I posted on Facebook, something that Colleen posted on Instagram. There's been more than one person that has come into the gallery and was like, oh, I just saw this picture on Instagram. I wanted to come into the gallery and check it out in person. And then they buy it.
Yeah.
And
it's the new normal.
Yeah. And, I can't imagine not having an online presence. And, it's just a little both, because you don't get the same effect just seeing like,
right,
square,
Yeah. But I think only in terms of sales.
Yeah.
That you need to have an online presence.
Yeah.
It's like, as far as making sales, you have to do that.
You do.
But having, a gallery has to be a physical place. If you're a serious art collector, if you're really into it, or if a serious art fan, you have to go and see it in person. There's no other way to experience it, really.
Right.
Not to fully experience it.
Totally.
It's like online experiencing art is great because you're able to access tons of it.
Yeah.
Conveniently, but you give something up when you don't see it in person. It's like a trade-off.
No matter how many times you post a picture of your art or whoever's art with the dimensions, people will look at it when they come to see it in person. Wow, that's so much bigger than I thought.
I thought it was the size of my phone screen.
Right. Like even if you read the dimensions, it's like people just create this idea in their mind of what the piece looks like.
It's good to, I 100% agree. It's good to have something for size reference, I think, too.
Yeah.
Just be standing next to it. I used to see artists standing next to their paintings, and I was like, what a douchebag. And then I realized, they're doing it for size reference. That makes sense. I'm the douchebag for judging him. but it makes, I just did, because I just did that on my Patreon. I was like, these paintings are really big for me. They're like 24 by 36. And I know people are going to think they're probably like what I normally do, which is 11 by 14 or 16 by 20. So it's like I posed with it just to get a sense that it changes everything.
It really does. It makes a difference.
Yeah, because you can't tell without any, on a phone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, though. Like, I have a piece that I sold recently where, there's a picture of me with the piece and then a picture of the guy who bought the piece. I'm like, the piece looks so much smaller with him. And then, I think about that with guitars, too. Like when I play a Les Paul, people are like, is that a hollow body? No, it's a Les Paul. And then there's a picture of like a friend of ours, he's a really big dude playing a Fender Precision bass. And Tony's like, I think that's a short scale. He's just a really big dude. He actually asked him, he's like, is that a short scale bass? He's like, no.
No, I'm a long scale person. Yeah, that's funny. So since we are talking about music, talk about your band, because I know that's something you put a lot of energy into, and it seems like another super fun thing. Sounds like your life is pretty fun. You do a lot of fun stuff. I mean, artist, musician, curator, living in this cool little funky desert town. Sounds like a pretty amazing life to me.
It's fulfilling. I was thinking about that because I was thinking about like a lot of the questions that you ask other people in the podcast about, were you the art kid and stuff like that? And I was thinking about when I was a kid, and I wouldn't necessarily say I was the art kid, but I liked being I was a creative person, and I was always obsessing about like just imagery, and I like to make things. I would make like, in elementary school. I don't know if you remember this is obviously more of a girl thing, but those barrettes that were like kind of like woven with ribbons, that they would put in their hair.
Yeah.
So I kind of had like 5th grade. I had my own little business making those barrettes with the beads and the ribbons.
That's totally, I mean, it's funny. That's jewelry. It's assemblage. It's like, it's so funny because it's what you're doing now. So,
totally.
Really, an extension of that. And that just to me proves that it's the right thing for you to be doing. If you're doing it when you're a kid, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's because I was doing it when I was a kid. Because that's, when you're a kid, you know what you like, know.
And I had I remember thinking when I was a kid, like, this is what I want to do. I want to basically like have my fingers in all these little pies and just kind of like do things and just kind of make them work. And I'm like, that's what I'm doing now. And sometimes I feel like I'm barely hanging on by a thread. Like, I'm doing all these things. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Tell me about it.
But I also recently had, I've been studying with this woman, Camellia Elias, who's, I started with doing an online tarot class with her. She's from Denmark. And she's just, I was really drawn to her because, there's a lot of kind of flighty, new agey, airy fairy, love and light type,
definitely
in that world. And she's very just no nonsense, no bullshit. She has a PhD, super educated.
Wow.
And, I really liked her approach, and it's very Zen. And I remember she was talking one day in I don't remember if it was one of her courses or just a post she made, but about this notion of free will and how it's bullshit.
Right.
And I'm like, I couldn't grasp that at first.
Go ahead. I have to add something to it when you get a break.
Well, it was like she's basically saying there are things you can change about yourself, but you can't change who you are at the core. And my dad passed away recently in January. And,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that was heavy.
Yeah.
But before that, he and his wife were moving to Florida, which was a big move because they basically lived in the DC area, since before I was born. So he started just clearing things out and downsizing, and he would send me just random packages of completely like disorganized photos and random old school things. And I found this nursery school progress report from like 1975. And this amazing teacher took the time to write this whole one-page observation about me. And I read it. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly who I still am today. Like, she said something like, Wendy's, come a long way. And, what we thought was shyness at first may not be so much as fear, but just her lack of interest in the busyness and noisiness of those around her. And no problem sitting by herself, drawing or whatever.
That's so cool.
No problem telling people to bug off in her own quiet way.
Right. That's hilarious. I got one of those too from my mom gave it to me from I think it was preschool. I was like in some, this was the early 70s.
Yeah.
Where there was like all these experimental programs to, get kids to be more creative and this and that. And so there was a period where she was like taking notes on everything I was doing. Like parents, at least my mom, she was all like that at that, that was like, I think that was like an early 70s thing where you were just like totally observing your kid and really seeing what they were doing and trying to facilitate them, whatever. But she found this page where it was the same thing. It was like an evaluation of me from like 4 years old or something, and it was the same thing. And so I put it in like the last page of my book, Black Magic, the art book. It's like the very last page.
Awesome.
It's so cool to read. But I mean, that to me, that just says you're on the right path.
Totally.
You're living your purpose, and that's the best any of us can hope for.
Yeah,
is to live your purpose.
But reading that kind of like, it kind of clicked. Like, I understand what she means now about the free will thing.
Right.
Like, I can, make different decisions about my life and my behavior, but I can't change who I am at the core.
Yeah, you're never not going to be you.
Yeah. So now, what were you going to say about that?
Oh, I was going to say I just saw an interview with some neuroscientist woman who had just written a book about crazy neuroscience stuff. And she was saying how she was referring to these studies. She was basically saying how everything that she learned about neuroscience, it's kind of probably a controversial book, but like the newest neuroscience that's coming out, everything that it's pointing to goes totally against her scientific, rational thinking. And one of the things was there was some test they did where they were checking, like monitoring brain activity, like when they're monitoring brain activity, and the brain was lighting up to indicate what the choice the person was going to make before they made it. Like milliseconds before.
Wow.
Like you would never notice it normally, but it's like milliseconds. So she was basically saying, there really isn't even, I mean, you're talking more on like a metaphysical level. You can't be any, you can't not be who you are. But she was saying even on this, your choices, everything, it's like, you're just, they're able to find that it's almost like you're being told what to do and you're just doing it, and nothing is free choice, and it's like that is so crazy. But I mean, I've heard about time being described as a thing that's already happened and we're like passing through it. So that kind of makes sense in a way, like, but it's so hard to accept that.
It's so hard to wrap your head around that.
Yeah, that everything is predetermined. It seems so fatalistic, and
I know.
But at the same time, it almost gives you like, it's like, maybe I can relax a little bit now, not be so
surrender to it.
Yeah, surrender to it and just enjoy it, and and go with it.
One of the things that she says too. Even about reading cards, like the answer is already in the question.
Right.
And and that just reminded me too. I worked for a lot of years as a bartender and as a server. My last job was at a restaurant in Oakland, where I worked for like 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And I was a server, and there were times where I would ask, I would take somebody's order, and there would be a pause, and right before they said what they were going to say, I would hear them say it. I would know exactly what they were going to say.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't, there's sometimes where there's, a certain profiling that you do because you kind of know certain types of people are going to order certain things. And this was not that. It was like, I heard it. It was just like, they were communicating it to me before their mouths opened, and it was fascinating.
It's so cool.
And every time I heard that, it was right.
Wow, yeah.
I didn't hear it every time, but every time I heard it, it was right.
Yeah. I do that a lot. Like, I was... It's embarrassing to admit, but I like these shows like Project Runway. And I love that show for some reason. It's... It's the other one now called Making the Cut, which is like, it's like a fashion where they have to design. I just think I find it so interesting to see clothes being developed. In fact, I was never into it until I started watching these shows, and now it's like I get it's an art form. And it's really interesting in that way. So, but it's like, it's super cheesy and embarrassing to admit, but I like it. Anyway,
everybody knows.
I've said it before in the past. I got no shame, but everybody has these guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
But I was thinking the other day, I was like, because it got to the winner, the final thing, and I was thinking who was going to win, and it's like, I had a thought pop in my head who the winner would be, and I was like, okay, that was either just some part of my brain wondering, or, like, I kind of have OCD also. So it's like, I get weird thoughts popping in my head sometimes. And, but I'm always going like, okay, is that like a psychic thing, or is that just my brain doing its thing?
Yeah.
And it wasn't the right answer. The person, and it's like, so I'm always, whenever I have a thought pop in my head, I'm always trying to know how to spot the difference, because I've had that also where it's like it pops in your head and then it happens, or or you know something's going to happen and it just happens, or someone's going to say something and you hear it right before. And for me, it's hard to judge since my mind is so active. It's hard to know which is which.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I totally am with you on it, though. You've listened to the podcast enough. I'm into all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, Tony and I just did this thing a couple weeks ago. A couple who are friends of ours said that they started doing it, and where one of them will think of a color and the other one tries to, I don't want to say guess, but see what color it is. Yeah. So I'm like, let's try it. So he started visualizing a color, and I had something pop into my head, but I was aware that this was more of a thought, and I said it and I was wrong.
So you can tell.
Yeah, but it was kind of like, this is the first thing that comes into my mouth. But then I was like, all right, let me try again. And I just tried to clear away those thoughts and see what he was seeing. And then I got it right.
Wow. So see, I think that you're probably more naturally talented, because I really think there's like this element of talent when it comes to psychic ability, whatever you want to call it, clairvoyance or whatever. Because my wife is super talented at it, and I'm not. I've never been like really talented at that. It's just like it's like it happens sometimes, but not like with her. And on the other hand, I'm very like, I go out of body like and fly around like every week practically.
That's amazing. So everybody has a different way of doing it, and you do. I mean, look at your work. Like, you're channeling something there.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Something is communicating with you.
That's true. And a lot of them have been predictive, I have to say. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's weird sometimes, like the mask thing. I've been painting gas masks dystopian landscapes and gas masks. And if that wasn't 2020, I don't know what is. But, I did that Nazi face painting. I don't know if it's one I hardly ever show because people got all bent out of shape. But
oh, yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it didn't turn out as good as I wanted to either. I had to rush it. It was in a show, but it was weird because it was like it was a image I had in a trip when I was tripping one time, and it was just boom, I saw it in my head, and it said Nazi face. That was the title, one word, and it was It was like this white national, like a flat top, buzz cut, military looking. Kind of with no face except a swastika carved in the face, like kind of festering and bloody and really just horrible. And it was just so I was like, I got to paint that but this was before all this white nationalist stuff started happening, all this crazy Nazi stuff started going on. This was like
to the forefront of the news. It had been happening.
Right, yeah, true. It's always been there, but I mean, before it was something that was in my consciousness a lot,
right?
And so it was like. I remember painting that going, why did I paint that? It was like so out of left field. It wasn't totally out of left field. And then all that stuff started happening and the whole Nazi thing got in the public consciousness, and I was like, oh, that's why I painted it, because it was
Wow.
like 5 years before.
Fascinating.
And art, I just think art is like that,
Yeah.
It's our kind of our way of, clairvoyance or seeing into the future in some ways,
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's like this collective consciousness that you're kind of tapping into.
Yeah.
You don't even know like where it's coming from sometimes. Just like the idea that like time has already passed. It's like all these things already exist somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just trying to pull them out.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
One thing I also want to say, you mentioned talking about being whether you're the art kid or not, but you're creative. That's why the more I think about this, I think creator is a better term than artist. Kind of. I think there's more. I think we all have more in common as creators than as artists.
Yeah.
Because it's really about being creative and thinking creatively and wanting to make things. And there's a lot of that that's not in fine art. There's a lot of craft, but it's like it's all, that's more of, I think creator is more of an all encompassing term that all kind of like connects us all.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying?
A lot of people tend to think artists are painters or I'm an artist. Oh, can you draw me? Like, no, that's not what I do. And yeah, I've always wanted to create, and it doesn't necessarily mean I've always wanted to draw, but it's like I was always writing. I wrote lyrics when I was a teenager. I'm kind of glad that I saved some of them, or they're kind of cringeworthy now too. But I mean, almost like black metal lyrics.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even into like black metal, but reading them, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? Like the tormentor has come to take you alive. Just be his slave, and you'll survive.
Classic. You got to put that to music now.
I know. And even like, one thing that I did, I used to do, make jackets for people. Like I wouldn't make the jackets, but I would just, put studs and rhinestones and paint and stuff on jackets and, whatever, it was never like one thing.
But it's all kind of variations of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And it's just you're putting it in a fine art setting.
Right. And that was like, geez. Well, I guess, can I talk a little bit about my path?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to hit upon that for sure.
I know there's so much to talk about.
I know. I'm telling you, it's already in an hour, 10 minutes. These things go by fast.
Jeez. Yeah. It
but
seems
no
like
rush.
We just started.
Yeah, I know. Told you.
I know.
Told you.
What was I
easy.
nervous about?
Let's hear about it. Let's hear about your path.
Well, okay, so there was the art school thing, and after going to Montgomery College, the community college, for a year with taking graphic design and jewelry, I went to University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And, my stuff was always big, for jewelry. And, I would do kind of like body pieces and like elaborate neck pieces. And after I got out of school, I started doing shows, and I started playing in bands too around that time. So it always felt like this pull, like which direction do I go? Which path do I follow?
Right,
as if I had to make a decision. So I had this show of my fine jewelry work at a gallery outside of Philadelphia. And the night before the show, the gallery was broken into and all of my work was stolen.
Oh my God.
I know.
It's terrible.
Was like, holy shit. And it was a really good lesson. The work was insured, which was fortunate.
Yeah.
But it really, that was probably the best way to learn that lesson, to always check, which is not always a deal breaker, but it's good to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, as doing this gallery, I'm learning that insurance for galleries is tricky because technically the work does not belong to the gallery owner. It belongs to the artist. So we're trying to figure out a way to get around that and have the work insured, but it's not as simple as it seems.
Right.
But somehow this work was insured. Basically, the guy called me the next day. He's like, "Guess what? All your work sold."
Yeah. You had your first sellout show.
So I was kind of bummed though, because there was one piece that was a really big piece, and I'm like, I should have priced it higher. I was like, anyway.
Right.
But
that would be a good racket to have a gallery show and then steal your own work and then get paid for it, still own it.
Give our listeners any ideas.
For the criminally minded out there.
I'm sure there are much better ways of making that money.
Definitely.
Because then I'm like, well, what does this person think they're going to do with the work?
Right.
I mean, there is some gold and silver in it, but I mean, you'd be better off going to K Jewelers or whatever,
right.
Stealing some diamonds.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, I got this insurance money, and there was this guitar that I had my eye on for a while. So I took the insurance money and I bought the guitar, and that almost felt symbolic for me in a way, like, okay, this is like a sign that it's time to move into the, spending more of my focus on music.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a band at the time called the 440s.
Mm-hmm.
So we started touring, and we toured the country a few times, put out some records on Dionysus Records. And that's another one of those connections, those Joshue Tree connections now. Lee Joseph, who was one of the owners of the record label, lives out here now. And
wow, what a trip.
I know, he gave us some of our old records.
Wow.
And then Steel Cage Records put out our second full length. And I moved to Tucson in 2001. I got married. The drummer of the 440s was my husband at the time.
What kind of music was it?
It was like rock and roll, like kind of punk rock and roll. Hot rod rock, some people call it.
Okay. Motorhead-ish a little?
Yeah, there's definitely some Motorhead influence, which is awesome because I'm in a Motorhead tribute band. Fast Eddie was definitely a big influence on my guitar playing, like even from the very beginning.
Cool.
So, but it was always, the whole time I was like, I wasn't doing art or doing very little like visual art. But I started this piece because I decided I wanted to work bigger. I wanted to get out of like just doing this tiny jewelry work. It's so tedious, and it's like,
oh yeah,
good God, it's tedious.
Yeah.
And I did a costume for a woman in Philadelphia named Catherine Livingston, who was part of a performance group called Scrap. And she wanted I did this like chainmail kind of armor leather outfit for a dance performance that she did.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I got paid for it.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Like, this is great. So I had these stencil pieces that I made that were part of like the headpiece and breast pieces. And I started playing with them, and I cut them out of sheet aluminum again. And I'm like, I want to make just an art piece out of these. And like, they look like a heart. So I started messing with it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I never finished it. And I moved to Tucson, and, I still had this thing on my mind. And my old guitar player was a luthier. His name's Gordon Groves. Mm-hmm. This was the guitar player we got when we moved to Tucson. And so he helped me like cutting the wood and clamping it and, gluing it together. So it was this thing that, was just years in the making, just because I was only working on it here and there. Mm-hmm. But I never lost this vision. I never lost my inspiration for wanting to make this piece. Mm-hmm. And so eventually the 440s was over. My cat is freaking out right now. He likes to sit next to me when I do like online chats with people.
Yeah, so my dog is down here on the floor sleeping too.
I had all three of them in here. Now it's just two. But yeah, Cricket likes to sit in the chair next to me.
Love that.
Oh, so okay, so the 440s broke up. I did have a couple other bands in Tucson. One was called Whiskey Bitch, and then another was called the Sophistifucks. And
Cool.
that was with my friend Lenny Mental, who was, I don't know if you know Lenny. He's like this
Yeah.
fucking crazy looking guy with tattooed face and safety pins, and
Wow.
he cuts himself, and he's like the nicest guy ever. He was my roommate for a while in Tucson. And but like, that band, it was the perfect band at the time, because it was like, it was right before I moved to LA.
Uh-huh.
And every show that we played, we were not invited back again. So I'm like, we kind of ran out of places to play, and then I moved, and we made our mark, and yeah, and now we live in a small piece of history there in Tucson.
That's cool. I think the Meat
So
Puppets.
anyway, I moved to LA. I joined
Puppets are
another
from-
band there called Cockpit.
Okay.
And but this art piece, this is like part of the story of like all these bands, because I had this thing in my head where I'm like, I'm putting like everything into music. And, I'm a songwriter too. It was like every band that I was in, I was a main, if not the main, at least a main creative contributor to the band.
Yeah, me too. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Is writing.
And thank God not everybody feels that way, because then bands could never exist.
Right.
Art.
Yeah.
But I think that was the problem with that band Cockpit that I joined, because at the time it was like, I liked it. I liked just being the lead guitar player. I didn't have to do anything else. But then after a while, I was like, but this isn't my band,
Right.
And I started to want that again. But there was always this visual art thing that was in the back of my head too, like kind of knocking, on this door, like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still here. Like, don't forget about me. Oh, and it was like, it was kind of torturous, I'm like, I almost started to feel like, am I going to hell because I'm not living out like my destiny? I'm not paying attention to like who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm paying attention to part of it, but I'm ignoring part of it. But
Right.
how the fuck do I do it all? And like, I have to pay my rent.
Exactly.
And I can't get a fucking job. And that was a really hard time for me living in LA. I was only there for 2 years, and it felt like an eternity.
Wow. Yeah, I bet.
And I was, bartending. I was an on-call bartender at the Dragonfly.
Wow.
I worked at the Roxy. Some nights I didn't even make parking money.
Damn. Yeah, it's rough.
Just never knew. And then I would work for like staffing companies, and it was so draining because, and I did background work too, in movies, which was fun, but it was draining as well. It's like all these times where you show up to work and it's always a different place. You didn't have GPS back then,
Right.
The Thomas Guide. And it was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, but so now back to this art piece, right?
Right.
So I had this fucking art piece that had been in the back of my brain for like probably 6 years now at this point, where, I had part of it done. So I had it laid out on my floor. I had like this, 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood.
What street? What street were you living on?
Well, I was near Santa Monica and Western, so Little Armenia. I was right at Lexington and Serrano.
Oh, no way. Wow.
Yeah, like
I had a friend who lived over there.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I was right off the 101, the Santa Monica exit off the 101.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah, like if you were going northbound on the 101 from downtown, if you took the exit and you just go straight, you'd come up to where my apartment was.
Wow. Okay.
And it was really funny because with the first background job I did was I was in a Korn video.
Really?
By the way, I hate Korn. But anyway, it was, I was there, and there were hundreds of people there, and this girl started talking to me, and we just started chatting, out of all these hundreds of people who were there. And she's like, where do you live? And I'm like, I live near Santa Monica and Western. And she's like, so do I. I'm like, I'm at Lexington and Serrano. She's like, me too.
Wow.
We live like right across the street from each other.
What a trip.
I know, it's awesome. And we're still, we're still good friends.
That is so cool.
Later. This was in 2005. Okay, so this fucking art piece, right? Mm-hmm. So I have it laid out on my floor, and I was in a long distance relationship at the time. My ex-husband and I divorced when I moved to LA. Mm-hmm. When I lived in Tucson, and then I moved to LA. So I was in a long distance relationship with somebody who lived in Oakland, and I went up to visit him for the weekend, had this thing laid out on my floor, came back home after the weekend, and one of my cats had peed on it.
Oh my God.
Like, no. And there was, part of it was leather,
Oh, no.
You can't get that smell out of leather.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta get the smell out. I'm like scrubbing it and spraying it with vinegar and spraying it with like enzyme spray. I'm like, God, no. So finally I'm like, all right, I'm just going to take this piece apart, cut a new leather piece, put it on. And like, it was like when I took it apart, it was almost like opening Pandora's box in a way. It would like unleash something, or it was like, I realized that this is going to be better as two pieces. And I was just so inspired. And like that moment kind of was the basis for everything that I'm doing now. It was like that triggered this burst of creativity and this new passion for art that
amazing.
It still is what, pushes me to this day. And that was like 16 years ago.
Yeah. So when did you get what inspired the initial idea? Do you remember, or was it just kind of came out of nowhere? Because
I don't know.
It's interesting to think.
Yeah.
Obviously that was the big thing that you needed to push you in the direction you needed to be. And then it's like, you probably don't even remember where it came from, which is how all that stuff usually goes.
Right.
Just like you don't think much about it. Oh, okay, this would be cool. And it ends up being like the most important decision in your life.
Right. And then my cat peeing on it too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
that God damn it moment where
that's why you can't that's why you can't get mad at anything.
I know.
I always try and have the attitude that everything is pushing you towards where you're supposed to be.
Right.
Good or bad. So you kind of have to add this attitude of gratitude for whatever happens. You're okay. You
just like, go with it.
Yeah. This must be
again,
some
like
great
surrendering
thing.
to the process.
Yeah. This is going to put me somewhere that I want to be in. So I'm happy to have my dog piss on my artwork.
Your Aerosmith record.
Yeah.
I remember too when we first moved to Tucson, we bought this house, and it had this ugly carpeting, and we pulled up the carpeting, and underneath the carpeting was this beautiful like clay Saltillo tile.
Uh-huh.
So we ripped up all the carpeting, but they had put this layer of plaster to kind of level it.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, oh my God, we had to scrape it all up, and it was so tedious. And we were sleeping on the floor, and the tile is super hard. I mean, anything, if you just like kind of tap a glass against it, it's going to crack. Mm-hmm. So I had a glass of water next to the bed, or next to our mattress on the floor. And I woke up in the morning, my cat had knocked the glass of water over, and the glass broke. So it's like broken glass and water all over the floor. I'm like, oh, God damn it. But then I'm like, hey, the water softened up all the plaster. It's really got off now.
Exactly.
You just like wet the whole floor. And, again, like, hey, thanks, cat.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, cat, for breaking my glass and knocking my water over. I wanted to ask you, how do you go about creating a new piece? Because I since I don't do any assemblage work, it's like, do you have an idea for a shape, or is it like you have a bunch of objects that are resonating, or you have you have a piece of wood that's a cool shape that you start with? Or, I mean, how do you conceptualize it? Like, how do you create a piece, basically? Is it always different, or do you have like a system?
It can be any of the above.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
No
like
easy
sometimes,
answer.
Usually I create what I want to create. Occasionally, there's a theme for a group show that I'm in where I'm like I just did I think you saw the piece that I just posted last night.
It's great. Love it.
Thank you. Yeah. And that was for a show called All Them Witches, which is, kind of like a witchy art show. It's going to be at Cactus Gallery in October.
Excellent.
So I was kind of thinking like, I don't know, how can you would think that it wouldn't be something that I would have to think about too much doing a piece for a show with that theme.
Right.
But it was, I don't know, I was kind of at a loss. And then I'm like, well, let's just start with this. I had this figure, and when I think, I didn't want to be too literal. Like I kind of looked at some of the, I didn't want to do like what you think of like a Halloween witch with a broom and the green skin.
Yeah.
All that. And I'm just thinking, what does that mean to me? And the path that I follow, I don't necessarily consider myself a witch per se, but any of the magic that I work with tends to be, people talk about high magic versus low magic. Mm-hmm. And there's, a misconception that, high magic is good and low magic is bad, or high magic is superior to low magic.
Yeah,
no, it's just high magic is more about, a tradition and ceremonies and rituals and stuff that's been passed down for generations. And low magic is more about working with the earth sometimes, or plants, or...
I've heard also that high magic and low magic is... High magic is more concerned with becoming like enlightenment and becoming more spiritual, and low magic tends to be more like results magic, like healing, or I need
for specific things.
Yeah, I need to pay the rent this month or whatever. Yeah. And it's like they're just too. It's all the same thing. And the thing, and like the thing about being a witch or not, and I've heard so many different people criticize the word and say it's edgelordy and this and that. It's like, it's just a word. And, I'm sure technically it depends what time period you existed in. You would definitely be considered a witch if you were in the, in the Middle Ages, and I probably would be considered a witch. And it's like, it's like whatever terminology works for you. Some people are like, they like the light bearer thing, whatever works. It's all the same thing ultimately, I think.
And thank God we live in a time when you can say whatever you want.
Right.
And not freaking burned at the stake for it.
No shit. We take that for granted, just saying that you believed in this kind of thing, you just immediately be killed or imprisoned or tortured.
Right.
It's crazy to think that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's still, witch hunts to this day, and I want to say this. I know I'm kind of going off on a little tangent again, which is,
it's all right. The show's all about tangents,
right? But I just watched. Have you seen this? I think it's on Hulu, documentary. It's 2 seasons right now. I don't know if they're going to do more, but called The Devil You Know. This is not the Teflon DuPont one, but it's about the first. I haven't watched the second season yet, but it's about this guy who goes by the name Pazuzu, and he murdered these two people.
Yeah. Is that the guy? He's like, it's a series.
Yeah,
I've seen it. Yeah, that guy's he's crazy. He's like mentally ill. That dude.
Yeah,
he was.
He's mentally ill. He's nuts. And it's the same thing where it's like, with the whole Damien Eccles, West Memphis 3 thing, where they sensationalize this devil worship, and with Damien, of course, even that wasn't true. With Pazuzu, it is true. There was some devil worship, and there was, there were murders,
right? But this was because he was. They make it appear like, because he was a devil worshiper, he killed people. No, he was a devil worshiper because he was crazy.
He was fucked up.
He's mentally, he was seriously, he's like schizophrenic.
Yes.
And
it's I really appreciated the guy, the reporter, Chad, whatever his name was. He's like someone like us.
I didn't see that. I don't think I saw that series. I need to watch it. I saw another documentary, like one long documentary on YouTube about that guy is what I saw. So I'm going to watch it.
Check it out. It's really well done. This dude, I can't remember his last name. Chad something is a reporter, and he's just someone like us, and he wanted to get to the bottom of the story, and he basically said the same thing. He just wanted to demystify this it's almost like this glamorization of of fear, like fear porn, the devil, these symbols, these rituals these people were doing, and these murders, and it's like, no, this guy had a fucking dysfunctional childhood.
Yep. He was like the perfect combination of what makes serial killers, basically.
Yeah.
Abuse,
and then the devil worship,
mental illness
was a result of like that, the mental illness, the fucking childhood, the trauma.
Okay, I did see it. Sorry. Okay. I had to check. Yeah, I just saw it on YouTube in pieces, but yeah.
It's really funny because he's got this tattooed face.
Yeah, it's
just watched the last episode last night, and I had a dream that I was getting my face tattooed. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But then I looked in the mirror. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. But no, I'm not going to get my face tattooed like that. Okay, so anyway, where were you were asking about my process of making assemblage work, and somehow got up on this, and because I was talking about the witchy piece that I was making.
Right.
So sometimes I will try to think of it in context of fitting in with a certain theme, and I always take that theme loosely and not literally, and I do it in my way, in the way that I do, because that's the only way that I can do it, and if I do it that way, it's going to look like I tried to do something, and that never works.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I will just, in my studio right now, amidst all these towering boxes of supplies that I've acquired over the past few months, I have so many pieces, ideas just laid out. And
do you sort items that will work together, maybe in piles and stuff?
I try to store items with items.
Okay.
I have all my hardware in one drawer, my, drawer pulls and decorative antique hardware.
Okay.
And I've always remembered where everything was. I'm just now, after 15 years of working this way, starting to get to the point where I have so much stuff that I'm not remembering where stuff is anymore.
Yeah, you got to that's the one thing I did when I cleaned my studios. I bought a label maker. And I was like, label makers have been around. They had them in the 70s. Remember those old kinds that you would squeeze the handle?
Yeah.
But now they're or they've had them since the 90s, I think, these ones that just print out. And so I label everything in my studio, and I was just this morning, I was like, oh, I need this silver I used to paint this frame. I know exactly where it is. And because my label, I was like, before I would literally spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes looking for this one tube of paint. And it's made a huge difference just in efficiency, just labeling everything.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend getting one of those P-Touch label makers. They're not that expensive.
Yeah, or even just freaking a piece of masking tape.
Yeah, that'll work too.
I got this, it's a little tall shelf with small, tiny drawers at the Goodwill in San Diego. I'm like, this is perfect. And I was with Tony, and he was waiting in the car. I'm like, stop at this Goodwill. I just want to go in and, see what's in here. And I saw this thing. And I'm like, oh God, I hope it's going to fit in his car. I'm just going to buy it because it's only $12 and I can't pass it up. Luckily it did. And, so I have all this costume jewelry that people have given me, and I'm like, I need to organize it. So, I put it and organized it, but I have not labeled the drawers because I kind of sorted it by, chains, flowers, whatever. And every time I'm looking for something, I'm opening every single drawer.
I know, it's such a pain in the ass.
Okay, next time I'm going to label.
It's so nice when it's just everything's labeled and you're like, oh, right. I need a shoelace.
Yeah,
or I need a piece of kite string or whatever. Oh, there it is. It's so much easier.
And I really need a bigger studio, and I'm kind of at a point where
How big is it?
The studio is a guest house, so it's around 400 square feet. There's a full bathroom in there and a kitchen as well.
Mm-hmm.
I gave somebody the refrigerator because I didn't need it, and I used that little kind of nook to store frames, and now I have way too many frames to fit in there.
Yeah, I do too. I've got a whole garage full of frames I have to get rid of. I'm never going to use them. But it's like, it's literally like at least that many frames of old.
Nice.
So if you want them.
Well, no, we have a sale.
Yeah.
I don't know where to put them, but I'll find them. When I build my new studio.
Yeah, right. I'll save them. I'm going to have to get rid of them when I get my book printed. Because I have to store them, and I have this little loft in my garage, and most of them will fit up there, but I got to get rid of all these frames.
Yeah.
So I'll give them away. Anybody who wants them,
come
and get them.
I'll take them. Well, so yeah, that's what I do. I lay things out, and I have little call them little like vignettes, ideas of things to work on.
Yeah, but okay, for this one piece what was the first step for this last piece you did?
Okay, let's see. The first step was, I kind of came up with the idea that I'm going to use this figure, it's going to be centered around this little, I guess what was at one point like a little Virgin Mary kind of statue.
Okay, so you started with that, and you're like, I'm going to build the whole thing around that. Okay.
Clock, housing. So I'm like, that's where I'm going to start. And then the idea was like, I'm thinking witchy plants, earth. Like I just want to work in that kind of theme, start thinking color themes. I want like greens, browns.
It sounds like so much fun.
It is.
It just seems so fun.
And it's always the case where I lay it out. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to use. And then I start working, and then it just, I generally keep the core idea, but the details change. And sometimes even like, there have even been things that I've spent a lot of time on, like creating a piece to put on a piece, like. Right. Yeah. And pieces then once I start working, I'm like, no, this doesn't work anymore. Like it's evolved in a different direction. So
then you have another piece. You could turn it into another piece.
And then sometimes that will just serve as a catalyst to start something else,
Yeah, it's so interesting. So interesting and fun. It's like that with designing a painting. But there's more, because you have to render everything. It's like there's a point where it's just like, like lately I've just been painting so much, I'm just like, I don't want to do it. Yeah. It's just because it's like, I think I've mentioned before that, have you seen the documentary Beauty is Embarrassing about Wayne White?
Yes.
There's one point where he's painting, he's like, this is the ditch digging portion of the process, and most of it is the ditch digging portion. And so it sounds so freeing to not even have to think about that aspect of it. Yeah. And really it's more about arranging and really taking objects that already exist and placing them and arranging them. It just seems like I said, it just seems so much fun.
Yeah. But then the ditch digging part after that, we're like, okay, now
that's true. You
figure out how this is going to work.
That's true. Your ditch digging is you have ditch digging, it's just different.
It's like a reverse process.
There's no way of getting around the ditch digging, I guess.
Yeah. Like, okay, this looks great, but this is like physically impossible to actually make work. Like, but then I'm like, no, nothing's impossible. How do I do it?
Well, the other thing is you have to, I know this from doing my frames, is that you have to find a way to attach things that aren't going to fall off. Yeah. During shipping, because it's like I've gotten pieces that for shows that are just like glued on, that are, they arrive with like parts dangling off because they weren't really, there's a whole thing about making pieces really solid, and that's a whole thing. Yes. And I feel fortunate, that I went to school for jewelry and metalsmithing, so I have this really strong craftsmanship background. That's great. That's great. It's always been very important. And I like, as much as possible, I like everything to be kind of like screwed together or like attached in that way rather than just glued on. Yeah. And sometimes if there's like something really small or, lightweight, I will just use adhesives. Do you use 5-minute epoxy? Or what do you use for glue?
Not so much anymore. It all depends on, what I'm gluing. Of course, I'll use wood glue for wood and frame pieces, but E6000 has become like my kind of go-to adhesive.
E6000? I've never heard of that. I got to write that down.
Yeah.
What's it like?
Well, it comes in a tube. It's made by the people who make Goop. Are you familiar with Goop? Yeah.
Is it clear or?
It's clear. They do make it in black and white also. And it works great, but it tends to gum up after a while. So it's like every tube I get, I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep this one nice and neat. And then, I start working it, just the tube, like the tip of it just keeps getting gummed up and gummed up. And I can't use it anymore. And then I have to open a new one. That's my go-to. But, I do use different adhesives for different fabric glue, because I do use a lot of fabric in my work. And I mean, that shit is surprisingly like bulletproof when used in the right way.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I just with the kind of stuff I do with resins and casting and frames and stuff, and my makeup effects background, it's like epoxy putties, plumber's putty and stuff like that, pro epoxy, all that stuff is like so great when you know all the things that work for the certain aspects and you figure out a system. It's like, it's so nice to not be using one type of glue for every situation, but using the right glue for the right situation.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference.
And and it's weird because I feel like when I first started doing this kind of work, I had to unlearn certain things that I learned in art school, especially doing jewelry and metalsmithing, because that's a very fine craftsmanship. Very, with a history, and there's certain things you do, certain things you don't do. And using glue and adhesives is like a huge no-no. And I'm like, oh my God, am I cheating?
There is no cheating in art.
Right. I know. I'm like, no, and that's kind of what I do. I do what I need to do to make a piece work. And, I didn't know about that stuff at first. You were talking about the epoxy clay and epoxy sculpt. I didn't know that existed. And I was going to Home Depot and buying like this, it's not wood putty. It's kind of like wood putty, but the kind that actually dries. You know how wood putty doesn't totally dry?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but I was using that and it was so messy, but I was still like, oh, cool. Like this works, even though it looks like shit, it works.
Yeah.
And then I learned about epoxy sculpt. I'm like, oh, I can actually like mold this the way I want it and smooth it and sand it.
Yeah, it's great.
But then there's this part of me too where, there's this so much a part of my process is learning and exploring and figuring things out. But so when I get a system down and it's like, okay, I know what to do. It's like, am I cheating?
Yeah.
Because I know how to do this. Is that cheating?
Yeah. You're used to it being hard.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's like, I think that's when as we mature as artists, it's, and we get more experience, we become more efficient at creating artwork.
Yeah.
Because we've done it so many times.
Yes.
Which makes it more fun, I think.
Yeah, because it does make you better because you have more energy to put into like pushing your idea and vision.
Yeah, exactly. Creating the piece. It's like less thinking about the technical aspects that aren't as creative. I mean, those are creative in their own way, but you're able to put more into the meat of the piece, the art of the piece, I think.
Right. And I do, like we've talked mainly about my assemblage work. I do have this other body of work that's work on paper mostly.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Oh, thank you. And, that kind of started just by doing these kind of meditative ballpoint pen drawings. And, I got into doing that partially because it really balances out this problem solving. We're just sitting down with a piece of paper and they're definitely more meditative and more free flow, stream of consciousness things. And it's really cool because it balances that out. And it's like, okay, I can just sit here and relax. And I don't go to my studio to do those. I just do this at the dining room table.
Right. Yeah. So they're kind of like your your break when you get sick of the all the technical stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's those are like mandalas, kind of. They're like, that's what they feel like to me. Like just, like spiritual, abstract. I don't know. They're just,
I just connect lines and shapes, and they end up turning into something. It's kind of a fascinating process.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a couple years ago, did a traditional Byzantine icon writing workshop in Los Angeles, where I learned all those, traditional techniques with the gold leaf and the egg tempera.
Oh, wow.
All of that. And that was a really cool experience, even though I didn't know what I was getting into at the time, because everybody was super religious, and one of the questions, like this woman went around asking everybody, okay, what's your denomination? And she got to, I don't have one. And
you're like, witch. Satan.
And then we would sit there and have our morning prayers and everything.
Wow,
and
what a trip.
I'm just, again, I'm going to surrender myself to this process. Yeah. Learn from it, and I loved it.
This is one of the things about magic. When I started getting into ceremonial magic, it's so Christian-y. It really shocked me. It was like,
it totally is.
Wow, because so many people that are think it's this satanic, this satanic thing, and it's like, if anything, it's very Christian. Christian-y, it's like Lord and God and angels.
Yeah.
It tripped me out. But it's like, I'm with you on that. It's like, if I'm in a situation, I got no problem with that. It's all talking about the same shit. It's just a different tradition. Christianity is another tradition of spiritual tradition. I don't know. The older I guess, the older I get, the less cynical I get about all that stuff, and it's all terrible and ruining the world. And it's like, some people really, really depend on that to get through the day.
Right.
It depends on your background, your circumstances, the kind of person you are.
Yeah. And there's so much, about Christianity in magic that is so much the root of Christianity that has been whitewashed. And
totally.
The what is that called? I can't even remember these manuscripts that have kind of been hidden for a long time.
Oh, the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the Gnostic Gospels, or
the Gnostic.
Yeah, Gnostic. Isn't it the Gnostic Gospels?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Tony. Tony, my
it's
boyfriend.
like the Christian Gnostics. They're like the early Christians that were basically into mysticism. More of a mystical approach to Christianity and experiential. Your first experience. You personally, as a practitioner, it's all about connecting with God yourself and being. And it's more occult. It's like an occult
My
version
will
of.
be done, not thy will be done.
Right. It's like an occult, kind of an occult version of Christianity. More in line with, I think, most people like us. Less conservative.
Well, Tony, my boyfriend, grew up in a very religious household. I did not. I'm just fascinated by religious imagery. So a lot of people think that I grew up Catholic, and I did not at all. Yeah, but he basically grew up being told that everything that he liked was evil.
Yeah. A lot of people that are really usually the people that are super anti-religion were raised in it and tortured by it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't, so I don't have that prejudice against
same. I don't either. But because of that, he's a very deep thinker too. And it really bothered him. And so that pushed him to really learn about religion and the history of religion. And he probably knows more about the history of all kinds of religions than anyone I've ever met.
Oh, wow.
We have neighbors who are Mormons. And they've invited us over for dinner a few times, and every time it's like, okay, the missionaries are there, and they're trying to get us to go to their church.
Oh, really?
And they're very nice people. They're
Right.
great neighbors. But I'm like, dude, we're not going to go to your church. I don't have a spiritual void in my life. I appreciate what you're doing. But, first time I went over by myself, the next time Tony came and there were these two young girls and Tony started talking. And I mean, he was just going, and these girls are probably like 19 years old. And Tony's like, well, Joseph Smith, blah, blah, blah. And he's like talking about the history of Joseph Smith.
Oh,
and
shit.
like out Mormoning the Mormons. And like, after a couple hours, finally they're like, okay, we're going to go now. Like, that was awesome. Tony's just like out talking all these religious people. I'm like, how do you know all this stuff?
That's amazing. It's fascinating. I mean, the history of religion is really the history of humanity in a lot of ways. Because, culture, even now, so much of our culture is built on it. Whether... Yeah. Most people are not, I don't think, are religious. I don't think most people are religious. I don't know what the specifics are, but less people than ever, I think, are religious. But still, the culture, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
In the culture, it's on the money.
Yeah.
In God we trust. It's like, it's in the way, the things we, like, figures of speech come from the Bible, all kinds of quotes that,
Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but it's everywhere. So it's kind of like, I understand being like, it's fucked up. There's a lot of corruption, of course. But at the same time, it's like, we come from that, whether we like it or not. We were raised in that culture. And so it's like in there in a weird way. It's like, it's part of who we are.
Our interpretation of religion over centuries has kind of devolved into this place where it's become something that is almost against what it originally
it's like
for.
but in a way that's like it's kind of like it's always been that way, because even with the whole story of Jesus was like he was basically telling all the priests of the dominant religion at the time, like, you guys don't get the point. You're missing the point. Right. You guys you're the bad guys. You know, it's like it's kind of like the same thing, and it's like throughout. Even if every time I've heard things from the Bible that talk, it's so obvious to me that it's like they're talking about these super fundamentalist Christians now. Right. It's all the stuff in the Bible where they're saying that people that basically the. You know what I'm saying. I can't think of anything specifically at the moment, but there's so many passages about like hypocrites. Hypocrites that it's all like performative, their religion, and if you have to find God, you should go away in your own, go and talk to God, and don't advertise that you're Christian or whatever. It's like totally talking about these fundamentalists that don't get it. Right. Even back then, even the Bible that they're saying is the Word of God, is talking about, it's basically critiquing them. Right. And they're holding up the Bible and using it against people. It's so weird.
Right. My old band, Andalusia Rose, this was my band in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Our last, or our only full-length record that we made was, well, that's not true. The one that I made with the band, I made one before I had the band. It was called First Stone. Mm-hmm. And I wrote that song, First Stone. I was just sitting down to write a song, and I'm like, I just opened the Bible. And I'm not an avid Bible reader, but the first page I opened to was that one, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So I just wrote the song about the hypocrisy, do you really want to be the one to throw the first stone? Yeah. And it's about that whole concept of like, what's in the Bible,
Yeah, it's absurd. It's so absurd. But shit. Anyway, I don't know. We're coming up on 2 hours, so I gotta let you go.
Wow.
Yeah, it went fast, right?
So, and Cricket's still sitting here next to me.
So, what to end it? What do we have in the future for you in the near future? What are your plans? I mean, are you just kind of like riding the wave and surfing it and just seeing where it takes you, or do you have like an ultimate plan of where you want to be, or?
Yeah, I think about that every day. You know, and I'm creating work, and you know, I really want to have a solo show, or maybe not a solo show, but you know, a featured show more than a group show where I have like one piece.
You haven't had a solo show or a featured show yet?
No, I mean, I've given myself one at La Matadora, but I haven't had one elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
And that's a goal of mine. I really want to have a show with this work, because it's like seeing it together, like in context of all of it. Right. You know what I mean? Like it gives. I can imagine. Gives context to the other. It looks so great, and I really want people to experience that. Where like in a group show, like you know how it is, your piece gets lost sometimes.
Totally. Yeah.
Even if it stands out, you don't really get to experience the full experience of somebody's work, seeing it like that.
For sure.
And I want that, you know, and it's not just about selling it. It's about the experience of it.
Well, you should make it happen.
Yeah.
Put the intention out.
Okay, there it is. There's my intention. So that being said, what I do tangibly have coming up in the very near future is I have my book. It's called The Magic of 8. It's in the process of being laid out, and my goal was to have it ready on my birthday, which is August 29th. Don't think that's going to happen, but it'll probably be done, with the whole, be ready to print by then. Because like, with your book, mine's not even anywhere near as full and ambitious as yours, but of course it has turned into a lot more than I originally anticipated.
Is it going to have a card set?
Well, I already have the cards, and a lot of people already have them.
Okay. How many cards are in the set?
It's a 44 card deck.
Wow.
It's available on my website, which is wendyleegadzuk.com.
Okay.
Wendy with a Y, Lee, Gadzuk is my last name.
Thank you.
So the cards are available there. The first pressing of the cards I did was an assigned and numbered tin box, which I don't have anymore, but there are a few of those available at Ghost Gallery in Seattle.
So cool.
That's the only place left where you can get those. But I have, a second run in a cardboard box, which is less expensive. So I have my book coming out, and it's a haiku poem for each card. And then, I have a little intro, and I have full color pictures of 12 of the drawings that I used. It's going to be a hardcover book.
Wow.
So I think I'm going to sell that. I'm going to do an option, to buy it with the cards.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of doing an audio version of that as well.
Oh, cool.
I don't know how to do that, but I figure with our home recording stuff, we can figure it out.
Yeah, that wouldn't be hard, I don't think, at all.
Yeah. And then I have...
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have the proofs that I made that I used to make the cards with, which are basically like black and white prints that I hand painted with watercolor.
Oh, cool.
So I sold a few of those. So I think maybe I'll add that as an option too. You can buy a book with one of those. So, okay.
I was just going to, not to go off on another tangent.
It's so easy to do, isn't it?
But I wanted to ask you quickly, how did you do the Oracle deck? How did you come up with this? Oracle decks, I'm telling you, I keep hearing about... Oracle decks have been around forever, but lately I keep hearing about Oracle decks, and every time someone says I did an Oracle deck, I'm like, damn it, I want to do an Oracle deck.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just curious. I doubt, I don't know if I ever will, but I'm not asking to benefit myself. I'm just curious how you did it. Because Mike Carell just did his Mysterian deck. It's like, it's a cool thing. I'm curious, how did you do it? How did you do it?
Well, so Carlina, the owner of La Matadora Gallery, this was at the end of 2019, and we decided that the December show we were going to do together, which was the first show that we curated together, and we wanted to do an Oracle art show. And this was like October, and I'm like, well, I got to make a deck for the show, but what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
I've got 2 months to do this. So I'm like, I couldn't do a tarot deck because that would involve a lot. So I'm like, how can I do this in enough time to get ready for the show? Like, because I don't work fast and I overthink things, and my style, whether it's drawing or assemblage, is very tedious and time consuming and detail oriented. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I have all these drawings that already exist.
Right.
And I see things in them. What if I just crop little sections of these drawings and see what they are? And that's what I did.
You like intuited what the meaning was?
Yeah, like I did the math. I figured out what size cards I wanted to make. So proportionately, I made this little cropping tool, and I just went over my drawings and I just cropped sections that looked interesting to me. And I had to work really fast. And this
sometimes that's like a blessing in a way.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to second guess myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to do this. So I came up with these sections. I printed them out. And I just wrote down what they looked like to me. And then a few of them didn't make the cut. And I decided 44 cards, that's a good number, just because it sounds good.
Yeah. So, okay. So you were you basing them on like archetypes, or, I mean, what was it just, give me an example.
Not consciously. Not when I did the cropping. Maybe a little bit.
I'm thinking like of the conceptually, like what the concept of the card is once you figure out what it looks like. What kind of titles are they? What kind of concepts are they?
I took the sections and I looked at them and I just wrote down what it looked like to me. And I probably had some knowledge of, working knowledge of like the tarot and other oracle cards in my head as I did that. But I wasn't like trying to make them something they weren't. So I just quickly wrote down what they looked like. And, I just had to have a lot of trust in the process, because I'm like, I don't have time to overthink this.
That's
and
great.
I want to do this. I know I can do it.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you would have, had 2 years to do it,
yeah,
it might not have. You might have overthought it and
totally
not had that real kind of, I don't know, spontaneous and inspired.
Yeah.
If anything, it doesn't. Not having a chance to overthink it is maybe gives you the most real thing.
Right. Right.
Because that's when you fuck up, is when you start thinking too much. A lot of the times.
And then you talk yourself out of it, and then you start wondering, well,
how many times have you done that where you've second guess yourself and then do this whole big thing all the way around, and then you end up back
right where you
first started, and you're like, yeah, that was the right thing to do.
Totally. Everything, music, mixing, even just like recording vocals. Let me try that again and get a better take.
Right.
And then the first one, that was the best one.
Yeah, and it's because we don't trust that we can get it right the first time, I think.
Yeah. So this was kind of, freeing, and it was very different than the way I usually work. But I'm like, I got to go with it. Just bam, bam, bam. I picked 44 cards. All right. 11 of each color. Yeah, I just picked 4 colors. I painted on them I printed them out in black and white, painted on them with watercolor, named them, and then I had to number them. And then I laid them out, and I realized that I can't remember if I was thinking about this as I was doing it. I think it's a little of everything in the process. I kind of had an idea that it should tell some kind of a story, but I couldn't overthink it again. Mm-hmm. But, in the tarot, it's essentially the fool's journey is what a lot of people say, like the 22 trump cards, the major arcana. Mm-hmm. And this kind of has a similar story where you start out with the cosmos is the first card.
Okay.
And then some of them are, move into plants and animals, and there's the king and the queen, which are the only like human. And then you end up with the celestial crown, which is kind of like back where you started, in the cosmos.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So
amazing. And it worked.
It worked. And I started reading with them. And, and that's another thing I talk about in this book, is that it's intimidating because you don't know what it's like to read with your cards until you actually have them.
Right.
And they're printed and they're ready to sell,
Right.
And, but they work. I mean, at least for me, I understand them.
Yeah. I think anything can be an oracle for anyone.
Oh yeah.
Really. It's like it depends on the person.
Coffee grinds.
Yeah, seriously. It's like it depends on the person. So anyone can, if you're in touch with that, that part of yourself, you would be able to read your cards and they would be just as valid as the tarot or anything,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do have a goal one day to do a tarot deck, but that's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But okay, I have the book coming up, which will be released probably sometime in September.
Okay.
I'm going to do pre-orders as soon as I get a solid number on how much the book's actually going to cost me.
Uh-huh.
Tony and I both are in the Coaster Show at Gallery 30 South in Pasadena, which opens in September. I've got this group show at Cactus Gallery in Los Angeles, which I think is going to be a pop-up at the Last Bookstore in downtown Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So that's called All Them Witches, and that opens, I believe, in October.
Cool.
What else? The studio tours, which is the Morongo Basin Open Studio Tours. This is the first year I've ever done that, which, a lot of the artists in this area will open up their studios to the public. So I'm not actually doing it here in my studio. I'm doing it at La Matadora with Kalina.
Oh, that's cool.
And then Bunny Rice, I'm not sure how you say her name. I think she's got a show at KP Projects right now.
Oh, cool. But
she's going to be showing in the front room at La Matadora. And then Kalina and I will have the back room with our open studios.
Excellent.
And I'll have a lot of work there available. And yeah, that's it. I mean,
that's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot. I'm actually planning on putting some stuff in the show in September, the one that Paul Kudenaris is not doing.
Right.
But Brooke Weston and Lauren, oh my God, what's her name? Lauren Kane, I think is her last name. She's a taxidermist out here in 29 Palms who has a company called Precious Creature. So she does a lot of pet preservation. Mm-hmm. But she's going to have some stuff in the show. We're going to chat tomorrow about more details.
Excellent.
So that's going to be at La Matadora Gallery in Joshua Tree in September, opening September 11th.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links to everything in the body of the text as well. Website,
awesome.
Which
is
and
Motorhead,
Motorhead,
the Motorhead tribute band. We have a couple of shows coming up in October. We're doing a van run in Anaheim on October 2nd, and then we're playing at the Palms in Wonder Valley the day before Halloween on October 30th. Like everything's subject to change with these crazy times that we're living in. But
right.
As of right now, that's the plan.
Excellent.
And Tony and I also have a project called Stone Levitation. It's a music project. And we've got a couple of, demos on SoundCloud right now. And we're working on more stuff.
What's the SoundCloud account?
It's called Stone Levitation.
Stone Levitation. I didn't know. You never told me. I put the podcast I hosted on SoundCloud.
Yeah, that's where I listened to it.
Okay. Now I have to go follow you. Maybe I already am. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I guess I'm so bad at SoundCloud stuff. So
anyway, sorry. I'll find you.
I'm bad with technology.
Okay. All right. So thanks so much. That was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Super.
I'm really appreciative and honored that you asked, and appreciative of all that you do for this community and the time you take to make this all happen and to have us all come together.
I'm happy to do it. I appreciate you. You're very active in the community and a great positive force in the community. So it's like the community is great because of people like you. The community. It is seriously. It's like I get a lot more credit than I deserve because it's like I'm not in the groups doing the posting and stuff. It's like you guys are all doing it. So,
but you're here. You're doing this, and you created like a platform for that to happen.
Yeah, that's true. It's like I'm doing what I can manage to do. So I appreciate everybody else kind of picking up my slack and making that community so great. Anyway, it was great having you on. Super fun to talk to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And don't hang up. I always forget to tell everybody that now because I'm so don't hang up until because I have to ask you something, and then we have to say
follow me on Instagram.
Oh yeah. Give your Instagram. It's
at Wendy_Lee_Gadzuk. Again, that's Gadzuk.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So now we have to say goodbye to the audience.
Oh yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Goodbye, audience.
Goodbye, audience.